Assalamu alaikum. Today inshallah we will complete with chapter 24, lesson 1, reproduction and flowering plant. Let's start with the structure of the flowers. As you know, the angiosperm's flower composed of 4 parts: sepals, petals, stamen and carpels. Stamen, which is the male part, carpels, the female part. The male part is composed from filament and anther, where we can find the sperms, which are the gametes for the male part, and the carpels we have ovary and stigma, where the male gametes will start or enter and to reach the ovary, where we can find the ovules or the eggs, which are the female part. Okay. Sepals and petals, the outermost circle of flower parts contain the sepals. So the sepals, they are the green part, the outer, and the petals, they are the colorful one, okay, which are brightly colored, found just inside the sepals. We have many colors for the sepals, for the petals, and these colors and numbers and even the shape attract insects and other pollination or pollinators to the flowers, okay. For the stamens are the male part of the flower, okay. Each stamen consists of the stalk called filament with an anther at its tip, where we can find the gametophytes, the male gametophyte or the pollen grain on the anther. On the carpel, the innermost floral part of the carpel, which will produce and shelter the female gametophytes and later seeds. Each carpel has a broad base forming an ovary, which contains one or more ovules where female gametophytes are produced. The diameter of the carpel narrows into a stake called the style, and the top of the style is a sticky or feathery portion known as stigma, which is specialized to capture pollen, which is the male part. Sometimes called single carpel or several fused carpel as a pistil. So the carpel, one carpel or several fused carpels called pistil. The angiosperm life cycle. The angiosperm have a life cycle that shows an alternation of generation between diploid sporophyte phase and haploid gametophyte stage. Again, alternation of generation that we can find it in the angiosperms is alternation between diploid sporophyte phase and haploid gametophyte stage. Male and female gametophyte live within the tissues of the sporophyte, as you can see here in this cycle. Let's start with the development of male gametophyte. The male gametophyte, which is the pollen grain, develop inside anther. So let's check the cycle. Meiosis produce 4 haploid spore cells, okay. Again, we have 2 ant cells. Then through meiosis, it will produce 4 haploid spore cells. These spore cells will then enter mitosis, okay, to produce the 2 haploid nuclei of single pollen grain. So these 4 cells that produced 4 haploid cells will produce another 4 cells, okay, 4 haploid cells. The 2 nuclei are surrounded by a thick wall that protect the male gametophyte. While let's check the female gametophyte development. The female gametophyte develop inside each carpel of the flower, and the ovules, which will be the future seed, are enveloped in a protective ovary, the fruit or the future fruit. Single diploid cells go through meiosis to produce 4 haploid cells. We will then, the cell will integrate the 3 of them, and there is still 1 haploid cell. This haploid cell will undergoes mitosis, producing 8 nuclei. This is the embryo, okay. These 8 nuclei and the surrounding membranes are called the embryo sac. The embryo sac contains within the ovule, makes up the female gametophyte of a flowering plant, as you can see at the right part. Cell walls form around 6 of the 8 nuclei. One of the 8 nuclei near the base of the gametophyte is the nucleus of the egg, the female gametes. If fertilization takes place, this egg cell will fuse with the male gamete to become a zygote that grows into a new sporophyte plant. Look at the pollination part. The pollination part, it's happened even by wind or even by insects. Okay, the insects will just attach to the anther or stand on the anther and then will move to another flower and the pollination will happen. Okay, so the pollination is the transfer of the pollen to the female portion of the flower. Some angiosperms are when pollinated but the other or the most are pollinated by animal. Because when pollination is less effective or efficient than animal pollination, wind pollination plants such as oak trees rely on favorable weather and sheer number of pollen grains to get pollen from one plant to another. Animal pollinated plants have a variety of adaptations such as bright colors and sweet nectar to attract and reward animals. Animals have evolved body shapes that enable them to reach nectar deep within certain flowers. Insect pollination is beneficial to insects and other animals because it provides dependable source of food, pollen, and nectar. Plants benefit because the insects take the pollen directly from flower to flower and that will make the pollination happen. Let's check the fertilization. You have to memorize that we have haploid cells, which is one set of chromosomes, and diploid cells, which is double sets of a chromosome or two sets of a chromosome. If a pollen grain lands on a stigma of a flower of the same species, it begins to grow a pollen tube. Of the pollen grains, two cells or one cell, the generative cell divides and form two sperm cells. The other cell become the pollen tube. So the first part, once the pollen will undergoes division, cell division, mitotic cell division, to form two cells. One of them will be the pollen tube and the other, which is the pollen. The pollen tube contains a tube nucleus and two sperm cells. The pollen tube grows into the stele where it eventually reaches the ovary and enters the ovule. Then inside the embryo sac, two distinct fertilization take place, a process called double fertilization. First, one of the sperm's nuclei fuse with the egg nucleus to produce diploid zygote, which will grow into new plant's embryo. The second, once the other sperm's nucleus fuses with two polar nuclei in the embryo sac to form a triploid cells or triploid cells, 3N, and this cell will grow into a food-rich tissues known as endosperm, which nourishes the seeds or seedling as it grows. By using the endosperm to store food, the flowering plant spends very little in the way of food resources on producing seeds from ovules until double fertilization has actually taken place. The resources saved can be used to make many more seeds. So as you can see, we have the embryo at the lower left, and we have the endosperms and seed coat at the other part. Let's check the other types of reproductions. We have the vegetative reproduction. The vegetative reproduction, which is reproduction or asexual reproduction that will happen in the plants, when especially the flowering plant. Okay? The vegetative reproduction enables a single plant to produce offspring genetically identical to itself by mitosis. It doesn't require gametes, flowers, or even fertilization, just you have to take part of the plant to make it a new plant. This process takes place naturally in many plant parts. Let's check the types of vegetative reproductions. We have new plants may grow from roots, leaves, stems, or plateaus. A potato, like an example, is an underground stem that can grow whole new plant from buds called eyes. Because vegetative reproduction doesn't involve pollination or seed formation, a single plant can reproduce quickly. Asexual reproductions allow a single plant to reproduce genetically identical offsprings, enabling well-adapted individuals to rapidly fill a favorable environment. One drawback of sexual reproduction is that it doesn't produce a new combination of genetic traits, which may be valuable if conditions in the physical environment change. We have another part or another example, which is plant propagation. To propagate plant with desirable characteristics, we can use cutting or grafting to make many identical copies of plant or to produce offsprings from seedless plants. Okay, and we have also one of the simplest way to reproduce plant vegetatively is by cutting. We can cut part of the plant, and this cutted part will be put in the water, and then it will grow again to fully plant. Grafting is a method of propagation used to reproduce seedless plants and varieties of woody plants that cannot be propagated from cutting. They can use it many times to get desirable